Okay. So I guess we could start with the quick introductions of everyone on the call. Adedai, I think it would be nice for you to kick us off with an introduction, and then we'll go around the room, and then everybody gets takes turn.
Okay, awesome. Hi everyone, I'm Adedayo. I'm the CEO of TAN TV, and very excited about this town hall. Discussing important issues, TAN TV Talks. And yeah, TAN TV, just a quick intro about TAN TV. We're a media platform. We cater to the African and Black multicultural diaspora. And so, check us out, tantvstudios.com. We're always excited to cover different pockets of diaspora communities within the US. So we basically focus on, people those of us in the diaspora, the US diaspora that call America home. We have lives here, we have businesses, we have families here. But nonetheless, we still have family ties on the continent as well. So TAN TV is that hub for us to have our voices heard and amplified, and be at the table, showcase our businesses, tell our stories. So it's really an exciting company to lead, and very excited to see and new faces join us through this town hall, and get to know each and every one of you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Adedayo. I guess I would go next, and then I'll pass on the baton real quick. So my name is Abolaji Omitogun. I am the COO for TAN TV. I basically lead our day-to-day activities. As Dayo mentioned earlier, a lot of our work particularly caters to the African and Black multicultural diaspora. One of the reasons we decided to do this is because the current events or happenings on the continent was of particular interest to us as a media organization. While a lot of our activities covers the diaspora, people here in the United States, right? We also do pay attention to things happening back home. So, that was one of the reasons we started to do this town hall. But I'll stop here, and I'd definitely like to give our audience to Daniel, and then maybe Daniel, after introduction, you can pass on to the next person.
Okay. My name is Darnell Clayton, and I'm not a CEO, just a regular African. I work for a Fortune 500 company in the automotive industry. My interest in Africa started kind of with Black Panther, which led me to African ancestry, which led me to take a DNA test. And from that, Sierra Leone was able to grant me citizenship based on my DNA results. And so I've been a citizen of Sierra Leone for about since 2021. And I have visited Africa a few times. I wish I could go more, but overall, I have been paying attention to what's happening on the continent, and consider our ancestral home kind of like our past and our future in a sense. So I guess that's all I will go on for now, and I'll pass it off to Jean-Claude. So yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jean-Claude. I go by JC. Originally from the great country of Gabon, and I do believe in the power of Africa, and more importantly, what the diaspora has to do in terms of bringing and going to the next stage that needs to happen, as from a biblical perspective, what the Josephs were actually brought to do in Egypt. It is time for the African diaspora to unite and to go after what it is. Only Africans can develop Africa. Others can assist us, but it's important that we know and we are born into ourselves and realize our place in this world, and that Africa is not only the next frontier, but it is the frontier. So I'm here to serve, and I'll be very interested in discussing the effect of the 1884 Conference on Africa, but also the French influence in Africa, and where the country, especially the Francophone countries, are, and where all of us as Africans, regardless of where we are or where we are born on this planet, we need to work together in freeing the others who needs our help. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jean-Claude. And I would say Jean-Claude is also a CEO of Africa Tech Consulting, I believe. All right. John, I would like you to pass on the baton to someone else.
that I see Ramona Charlene.
Ramona Charlene. Ramona, please kindly unmute yourself and make a quick introduction. Okay, looks like Ramona is unavailable. Would go ahead and introduce Ahmed Tijani. Please kindly introduce yourself, please.
Yes, my name is Ahmed Tijani. I'm a second-year MBA student at the American University. Up to about a year ago, I was in Nigeria. I was there all my life, right? So when I saw this particular topic, I was very interested because I have a lot of passion for Africa. And just as John said, I believe we are the best to build our continent, not some foreigners. We understand ourselves more. We understand where the shoe is pinching us, and I believe we can fix our problem better, whereas the other people can only support us. That's one of the reasons why I joined this program. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ahmed Tijani. I would like to call on Donley Howard. Donley, are you on the call?
Okay, yes. Hi.
Hi.
I'm Darnley Howard. I am a business consultant working on helping companies, both helping companies to raise capital and helping investors to find good opportunities in various parts of the developing world. I'm doing a lot of work in Africa. I've done a lot of work in Ghana, particularly, and working on some projects in a couple of other countries as well. And since we've had these big events in Niger and Gabon and a few other places, they've really caught my attention, and all the other, there's a lot of different dialogues happening in various places, in think tanks and a lot of various other groups. And so I'm gravitating toward people who are hopefully going to drill down a little bit on this issue, get kind of a deeper understanding beyond, oh, this is just something happening in Africa, and let's hopefully try to understand what happens in some countries and what doesn't happen in others, and even within those countries that are experiencing instability. Each of them I think is a different story, okay. although there's some commonalities as well. So we should understand both those differences and similarities.
Thank you so much, Donley. I am going to call Ramona one more time. Ramona, are you on the call? Are you able to unmute yourself real quick? Ramona, do you want to introduce yourself? Otherwise, there's...
Hi, I'm Ramona Van Hadorn. My dad, people via African ancestry, I'm driving, that's why I was trying not to go on. Is from Gabon, Sangenbenga. So that's why I'm kind of interested in what's going on there. I'm also Mende and Fula.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mende computer. Okay? So I'm just going to be listening on. I mean, y'all can take a look at my steering wheel if you like.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ramona. It's good to meet you.
Okay.
All right. So I'm going to just one last person, Akeem. Can you go ahead and unmute yourself and introduce yourself?
Indonesia is another strong partner.
Oops. Akeem Adekoya.
Hi, Hakeem Adekoya. I was told to join by a friend. I don't know why I'm here, but my name is Hakeem from New York.
All right, you get to know why you're here, very simple. Thank you for joining. Adedaya, over to you for the opener, and then we can begin the conversation proper.
Awesome. Very nice to see you all, and those who are not on the call but watching. So I'm just going to kick off with an opening statement. The Berlin Conference of 1884 to 1885, Western countries partitioned Africa and set rules to divide its resources at the expense of African people. In the past 3 years since 2020, 7 African nations have experienced military coup, with their presidents being overthrown. These countries include Mali, Chad, Niger, Guinea, Sudan, Burkina Faso, and Gabon. Notably, most of these nations were once French territories. France, with its deep historical ties in West African politics has been significantly affected by these developments. However, the US is also paying close attention, especially given Russia and China's prominent roles in the region. These shifts raise important questions about the future of Africa and its relations with the global community. Another pertinent question is whether the African diaspora community is taking action or remaining passive in the face of ongoing post-colonial exploitation. So thank you for joining us for a virtual town hall to discuss and share your perspective on this very important topic. And I'm going to pass it over to Abolaji, who is going to moderate this forum.
Thank you so much, Adedayo, for the perspective and for the opener. Just so we are all on the same page, this is a town hall and it's supposed to be conversational, right? On this call, I don't want to believe any one person is an expert, right? It's an opportunity for us to share our thoughts, our opinions, our insights, and everybody to just share things that you believe are your personal opinions, right? The conversations here, I would say, just as a disclaimer, do not the opinions shared on this call are not that of opinion of TAN TV, but the opinions of people, individuals on the call. So just to kick off this conversation, I want to kind of help us shape the perspective, right? I want to talk about the France historical relationship with its former African colonies, and of course the origin of the anti-French sentiments and the evolution of this sentiment over time. I would like to just call on Jean-Claude to share your thoughts, your perspective on on some of this on the historical relationship of France with many of these African colonies, right? And what are some of the sentiments you're hearing, and how has that sentiment over time evolved? Right, we can do this with Jean-Claude, and we can take some other additional comments or opinions. So if you have an opinion, please kindly just use the raise feature on Zoom, and I will definitely call upon you. But I would like to start with Jean-Claude. Please go ahead, John.
Thank you, Abolaji. I'd like to take this opportunity today to thank you and TAN TV for what you do for our community and what you do for our continent. It is important that we all understand that in all, media and being informed is considered the fourth power. So on this occasion, I'd like to take maybe 2 seconds to recognize the people that have died during 9/11 in September 11, 2001, but also for the 2,500 that actually perished recently in Morocco, which is an African country, due to an earthquake. And I would like to start with Morocco, because interestingly, when the earthquake started, the king of Morocco, Mohammed VI, was actually in France. And the French authority actually requested to send some help in order to assist the people of the Kingdom of Morocco. And the king basically denied that request. But that's kind of interesting that you will be in a dire situation where you lost 2,500 people in the earthquake of magnitude 6.2. And then one of the countries that do have some resources, and that's not that too far from your country, you will refuse that request. It's basically because there are some underlying issue that's been there for many, many decades. So I'll call what's happening in Francophone Africa similar to what we have in terms of the Arab Spring years ago, and we'll call this the Francophone Spring in essence, but somebody could call it differently. And this kind of goes back into the colonial era, and also before the independence of our countries, back to the 1884, where in Berlin with Chancellor Bismarck, 14 countries decided to divide up Africa into 50 irregular countries dividing 1,000 indigenous people and basically creating the chaotic situation that we have today. Now, out of those 14 countries, about 7 countries decided, or 6 countries decided not to take part into this. And one country was USSR, which is today Russia. You also have countries like Sweden, but England, France decided to go after the division of Africa. So we talk about the sentiment that actually happens in Africa. And to this, I'd like to say a few things. In 1957, Mr. Kwame Nkrumah, a great visionary, pretty much said a few things. And I'm just going to say a statement of what he had said. He said, "At long last, the battle has ended, and thus Ghana, your beloved country, is free forever. And yet again, I want to take the opportunity to thank the people of this country, the youth, the farmers, the women, who have so nobly fought and won the battle." And then he added, "The independence of Ghana is meaningless unless it is linked up with the total liberation of the African continent." So as we are streaming and talking, I would like all of us African to take seriously what is at stake here, that we all together, regardless of your social status, we need to come up together in freeing Africa. Enough of having youth dying in the Mediterranean to go to Europe. Africa has the wealth. Africa has the power to actually provide electricity, gas, agriculture, skills in different areas to the world. And it is until we see what the colonizers saw in Africa, until we see the potential, we're not going to be able to rise up to what we could do. And in terms of those particular sentiments, for example, France, a lot of people always talk about, and I know that, there could be some people coming back and saying they disagree. People always ask the question, well, when we're looking at the UN Security Council, we have 5 permanent members, but how is it that a country that was invaded by Nazi Germany and was liberated by some Africans, by United States, and I say by African because a lot of Africans fought for the independence of, for getting rid of the Nazi in France. And they used to be called tirailleurs sénégalais, meaning they were the men in arms from Senegal, and they used Senegal to basically kind of, give a name to all of those Black population that came from the former colonies, which were at the time 18 colonies. They went to fight, and they were never recognized until recently. And when you kind of look at it, de Gaulle, who was the general that decided to break away from accepting Nazi, went to Congo Brazzaville, and for a minute, the capital of the French resistance was in Africa. And from there, not only they took the people, but also the resources to go and fight to gain back France as a free country, right? Now, during the time that France was actually occupied, the Nazi decided to put a currency. They used to use their own currency so that for every particular exchange that anybody in France need to do, it has to go through the German system. So interestingly, that after the war was over, French kind of liked that system and say, hey, you know what, maybe we could do the same thing on those African countries. And they implemented the CFA, which basically meant, it's a French colony in Africa, CFA, right? So colony French in Africa, which they kind of changed, but it's still considered an insult, right? But out of the war, France was so impoverished and in debt that they needed to get access to free resources to be able to build back their economy. Yes, there was a Marshall Plan from the US, but in terms of the resources, natural resources, they basically took it from Africa. But here with a currency that they were the only one to get control over, and they require that the former colonies back then would keep about 75, and it went down to 65, and now it's 50% of that money into a French bank, what they call an account, an operation account. And out of that money, you could only, if you wanted to take more than the 50%, then you had to borrow an expense. But that money that you leave there, you could not have just access to it anyhow, or any interest was not yours because France could just reuse it for something else. So it's pretty much as if I creating a new currency and I call this currency A, but I created, I own it, and I tell you, I want you to use this. And on the other side, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the dollar, right? And I'm just trying to make this as simple as possible. I'm sorry if I'm a little bit long, but I believe it's very important that we kind of understand this concept, right? So I create this, it's a paper, and I say, all right, this particular paper now is going to be equivalent to this $20 bill. But anytime you need to buy something, you give me this, right? You give me this. Since I'm the one that created, but what I do is I take your product and I sell it in the international system, and I get some dollars. So let's say I get $20 from the US that bought that currency, that bought that particular product. I take that $20, I put it into my account, and now I give you this, and I tell you this is the equivalent of $20, but in that currency that you cannot use to trade. But that currency, if you're trying to take it to Asia, nobody's gonna use it. If you're trying to take it to the US, nobody can use it because it can only be used between you and France. But then at the same time, right, that money that I give you, I'm telling you, oh, you know what? Because of fluctuation in the international system, I cannot give you the full amount. I have to only give you 35%. Then it went up to 45%, and today is 50%. So that means that you're just going to get half of that. And with that, you are supposed to develop your economy. That's what the CFA is. But then this, who dictates what the value is this? The value of this in terms of the actual raw material could be just equivalent to a penny. But you're telling me that in the international market, it is equivalent to $20, but you keep that $20 and then you give me that particular value that might just be 10 cents. So because those countries cannot develop, you could imagine that when you're looking between the Francophone and the Anglophone Africa, there's a lot of disparity. Back in the 60s, countries like Ivory Coast were at the same level, or even you have some people coming from places like Singapore, and they say they want to learn about how Ivory Coast has been able to develop its agriculture. Right? They wanted to learn from an African country. Back in the 60s, some of these countries were behind. Some of those Asian countries. Today, everybody talk of them as example, like the 5 dragons, Hong Kong, Singapore, Malaysia, so on and so forth. But Ivory Coast is probably still close to the same level it was 63 years ago. So, and the fact that all of this particular situation has happened, France makes sure that, and they had 2 things. They were called the colonial agreements. The colonial agreements were agreements, it was between 11 or 13, that were actually decided before the independence. And some of those were about what? For example, saying, if there is a raw material that you find in those colonies, you have to only sell it to France. So France has a first right of refusal. But then at the same time, if France was interested, you could only sell it at a price that France would tell you to. And again, development cannot happen unless there is an economic independence. So in the 60s, what they did, they gave some type of political independence, but they made sure that they control the natural resources. They also made sure that they were deciding who was going to be president. French was responsible for many coups. Today people talk about the Wagner Group. Guess what? France did the same thing in terms of removing from power people that were in countries that they felt were going to go after the interest. Today, we have about 2,000 military people on the continent from France. They have bases in Gabon, in Senegal, in Chad, in Ivory Coast, in Djibouti. And why are they there? I mean, except for Djibouti, where they say, they're trying to control the navigation, against pirates, that is to protect their interest. So in view of that, not enough resources, financial and so on, are being given to those countries so they can develop. And this is one of the situations where today the youth, which were not born, for example, during independence, are kind of saying that, well, they say our country is rich, but how come we don't have this? Niger, 2/3 of the electricity in France is provided by the uranium from Niger. It's about $38 billion in terms of value that every year that represent, but Niger only probably received $350 million. Niger received most of electricity from Nigeria, which is a situation where today, with this particular coup, Nigeria decided to cut electricity to Niger. But Niger could have been the one even providing electricity to that entire region. So all of this disparity makes the youth that do not understand why people say the country is rich, but they're not seeing it. They're not enjoying it. Maybe it's a minority. Maybe it's the people in power that's only enjoying it. So where's the value in being in those countries? Again, and this is as people now understand that all of this was put together to make sure that those countries do not develop, that they always being the one who produce raw materials, is a reason why you see a lot of people who are awakening, and through the social media, people are learning, people are talking, people understand better that our situation is not just because of we have corrupt people in power, but we have friends that actually put together a system that, and I must say this, a system that everybody knows, a system that even the US knows. And I'm going to say it again, it's a system that even the United States of America knows, but are saying nothing. So until we get together and take the battle of every other African continent to make sure that they are free, nobody's going to come and help us. So we have to help ourselves first. And when people start seeing changes, now they start saying, you know what, maybe we should be on that side. And this is what we're seeing in a country like Niger. And I'm going to stop at this particular point so that I could give others the opportunity to add and to say or to contradict some of the things that I have said. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Jean-Claude. I mean, you very, very much, help us to put this whole situation into perspective. Some of your points are very, very accurate and apt. I'm going to hold my peace, and I do see Daniel, right? Your hands is up, so please kindly unmute yourself and quickly share your comments, your thoughts, your opinion, also, Daniel.
Okay. Thanks, Jean-Claude. That was great. I'll be quick because he just covered most of the ground. I think what Jean-Claude described is what they would refer to the West as a vassal state. A vassal state, pretty much their only existence is to support the mother country. And so they pretty much, their politics are controlled, their economy is controlled, and their culture might be controlled. So pretty much France has created vassal states all over Africa, as well as other parts of the world, but mostly in Africa, to control these regions for the benefit of France. That's what the CFA franc is for. And I think the reason that many of the youth are mostly upset because they have no hope. It's like as Jean-Claude said, they're seeing all the benefits. But they're on Twitter, they're on Instagram, they're on YouTube. They see everyone else living the highlight, and they're struggling. And so that's making them very, very upset about that. Another thing I have noticed about the Francophone coup d'etats is most of those militaries, the leaders, were actually trained by the United States. This is something that's been very, very embarrassing to America. And not only were they trained, but many of those leaders were actually know each other. Like they were talking to each other. They'd be like in boot camp together, breaking bread and everything. And then it started with Guinea. Like Guinea was a different situation. The president was trying to run a third term illegally. So the military took over after the president went kind of crazy. But then others are like, hey, like our buddy over there did that. Why can't we? And it just kind of started a chain reaction. And so the United States is kind of like has their pants down because they train these people to protect these countries against terrorists and uphold democracy. Now they overthrew it. But I think a third point is many of these countries are turning to Russia, which I think people see as a good thing, but it's really not as good. If you look at kind of what Wagner's doing on the continent, they have a lot of human rights abuses. Basically, civilians being killed, women being raped. And it's like Russia right now, because of the coup, is like their only option. And I think that's bad because Wagner, or I'm not sure if Wagner's going to exist in the future because of the whole thing with Russia, but they're basically taking the gold out of the country and the resources. And they might give them a helicopter, but they took like $10 million of gold out of the country. And so it's kind of like, I'm not blaming the coup people exactly, but it's like they have very few options left. And I do think that collectively, both in diaspora as well as the continent, we have to come up with workable solutions because right now the countries like in Mali, Burkina Faso, like Burkina Faso, for example, they've had apparently 40% of the territory, 40% is controlled by terrorists right now. And those countries are pretty much being eaten alive. And so you don't want a vacuum in the area because otherwise you got other parties that move in, especially France. I think France is waiting on the sidelines to get back in. They're already arming, they're putting troops in Senegal, Benin, and other places to go back in. Fortunately, Nigeria said they were not going to invade. If Nigeria invaded, there would be a regional war and it'd be crazy. And I was just like screaming at, the president of Nigeria, like, what are you doing? Because it's going to be a regional war. And the only winner is France. Like France is going to be like top dog winner. Everyone else is going to get bloodied. All your sons going to get sacrificed. Even Americans get sacrificed. And France is going to get all the benefit. And so I was just like, I was very, I was happy that the Senate in Nigeria said we're not going to war. So that was good. And so, and I guess that's all I have to say about it. But yeah. So
thank you so much, Daniel. I mean, I think we're all excited. Again, it still remains to be seen. I think this is still being contemplated, right? But again, so far we're excited. There's really no war, breakout in the region. I'm going to hold my peace and just ensuring that we have more people contribute to the conversation. And for those that are just joining, again, this is a conversation about the Gabon. Gabon, Niger coup, and of course the colonial influence of France in the region. Again, it's a town hall. There's opportunity for you to be able to participate in the conversation, to share your opinions and thoughts, and then that's what this is all about, really. I am going to call on Ahmed briefly, and Adedayo. Adedayo, do you have something you wanted to say real quick?
No, Ahmed can go on first. Thanks.
All right, Ahmed, please over to you real quick.
Oh, thank you so much. And thank you, John, for setting that, what I can call the historical perspective so that everybody understands where the issue is coming from. I mean, everything you said is exactly the way it is. There's something I also want us to know, and I'm happy that the people in the diaspora are taking this up to put the right thought out. I know there have been a lot of pains, especially the Francophone country and every other thing. One of the other things I want us to note is that the coup leaders in most of this country, save for Burkina Faso, were part of the system that grounded the country to what it is now. Go to Gabon, Nguema, go to Niger, Tichiani, all of them, they were part of the system. Being somebody that grew up during the military juntas back in Nigeria, I know the military are actually worse than the civilians they are trying to put out. So every time I see people celebrate coup leaders, I'm like, do you really understand the whole perspective? Because sometimes in running away from an evil, we actually run to the demon. That's what is happening. So people are just angry. They want to run away. But who are you running to? And I believe it's educated people, intellect that should set the framework of what Africa should be, not coup leaders, not military juntas. Military men are not trained to set a good template for the country. There could be very kind ones, like maybe Thomas Sankara, these guys come in once in a blue moon. The others are worse. Abacha in 1993, I remember we were celebrating on the streets when he took power. We were celebrating. We thought he was just going to take power from Shonekon and give it to Abiola. He just took him and put him in jail. And unless Abacha had died, Nigeria will still be on his old till today. He was just grabbing power, killing everyone on his road and every one of them. I know how those people do. What will happen, I predicted in Niger, is that Tijani is going to firm up his power. And that is why the Nigerian president is saying, I'm still holding this as a threat to tell you if you begin to step beyond your boundary, we'll probably have maybe an intervention. I know it's a threat. Nobody wants war in that place. Nobody wants war, right? But just tell him we are the big brother. We are going to clamp down on you in case you want to do. So as much as we are frustrated with what France have done and everything, which is our history and some of our present, we can't look on to the coup leaders. They don't know how to manage diversity. They won't do it. Very soon you are going to see a lot of dissenting voices, which the juntas are going to be clamping down on. So those are some of the things I want us to also note so we can set the right templates and not run to the juntas. They are not our friend. They should be in the barrack. They should be there safeguarding us as we make informed decision on how the continent will go forward. They should not be in the center of it because they are command and control. Command and control men can't bring various opinions. Military men can't have a town hall meeting that TAN TV is having today. They can't have it because there will be various opinions. They don't want that. They want their opinion. And that's why we should never look at them in our frustration. We should look to ourselves. They should stand aside while we try to look for a way to move our continent forward.
Thank you so much, Hamed. Real quick, Angelo, Adedayo, please just hold on a little bit. Angelo, I would like to hear your thoughts and opinion around this, and then after Angelo, Adedayo, I'll take your piece, your comments, and then I would like to also recognize Eugene and Gal. I know Eugene is also supposed to be a speaker on this conversation. So Eugene, I'm definitely going to recognize you. I also see some other folks on the call. Benga from the Nigerian Center, thank you for joining also. We see you. Angelo, please over to you real quick. Angelo Shetty.
Yes, hello everyone. How are you?
Hi, thank you. Go ahead, please.
Yes, thank you for inviting me to this very vibrant discussion that is overdue. I hope It's not gonna be just talking and then not getting together and strategize. So my background is I'm into real estate investment and also business strategies. But in this point, I will talk more about the socio-economic strategies that we here in the diaspora, we need to start thinking about.
And Angelo, real quick, before you go into the social economic strategies, we have a segment for that. If you don't mind just holding on a little bit, right? And I will definitely call upon you once we get to that particular segment. Is that fine?
Oh, that's okay.
All right, thank you so much. Adedayo, please go ahead real quick.
Yes, so just to acknowledge Jean-Claude and Ahmed and Daniel, great points. But to Ahmed's point on democracy and military, I think I just want to throw a question out to whoever can pick up an answer, right? And that question is actually two questions. One question is about democracy. Does democracy really work for everyone? You know, when you say you don't run to the military and don't look up to them for solutions, but is democracy the answer for some of the things going on the continent, right? And that's one question. And second question is the role of the African Union condemning the coup. What are your thoughts about that? And one last thing as well, the US has refrained from using the word coup in a lot of these cases. Why do you think that is? So whoever wants to pick up on any of this, thanks.
Okay, so I see hands raised. Let's start with Daniel. Daniel, real quick. Yes, Daniel, let's have you real quick.
Okay, let's see. I'll start with the last one first. The reason the US is not recognized as a coup, because if they do, for legal reasons, they have to cut them off and use sanctions and military. And they consider Niger an important location to fight terrorist groups to prevent them from attacking the US. That's one of the reasons why they don't do it. They did the same thing in Egypt. When Egypt had a coup, when I think it was a Muslim Brotherhood got overthrown by the Egyptian military, the US refused to recognize it as a coup because they want to keep the military subsidies to the government to fight terrorism, even though it was a coup. Second thing, whether you call it democracy or whatever government, I think it's very bad when you have leaders who are unaccountable. When that happens, like abuses go rampant, even the best of them, like they can do stuff and you may not know about it until decades later. Having accountable leaders is very critical in this modern age. Otherwise, you will get massive amounts of human rights abuses. And this is just a worldwide thing. And so like democracy is unstable. It's always unstable. Like even in America, it's unstable, but it provides the best alternative to having accountable leaders. So if someone could come out with a better system, I'm all for it. But I do not like the idea of unaccountable leaders. And I think there was a third thing you mentioned. Trying to remember what it was.
The African Union condemning.
Yeah, they technically have to. Otherwise, you'll just have a bunch of governments ruled by authoritarians. And that is never, I mean, it would benefit Russia and China. But what you're going to have is like, for instance, in Central African Republic, where Wagner forces are protecting the leader there, a lot of human rights abuses have gone up. There's people talking about how their men are killed and the women are being raped, and there's no accountability to the government. It's also happened in Mali and Burkina Faso, and then those voices have usually been silenced, which is bad. And so, as Ahmed was talking about, like people celebrate because they hate France, and yay, we hate France. But you're running to like a worse scenario in a sense, because you're cutting yourself access from the rest of the world. And with that possibility, Russia and China become your only avenues. And those powers, as much as people like to prop them up, they're more or less declining themselves. If you look at kind of the currencies and what's happening in those respective countries. And so they're not really exactly a good bet to bet on. So, and I will cease talking. So
thank you, Ahmed. I'm going to take your comments, and I definitely want to call on Eugene later on. Ahmed, Please go ahead.
Yeah, quickly. First, I believe one of the reasons why America doesn't want to declare that as a coup is its $500 million investment in the country. Immediately declare it, its $500 million will be in jeopardy. So for those strategic reasons, America decided, no, this is not a coup. We have something, it's just an issue with change of government. The second one is, I believe we can evolve our own brand of democracy in Africa. I'm a Yoruba boy. I know that when we were running, what's the name? The kingship system. Even the Alafin, it could be removed by the people. Do we remember? There is Oyomesi, there is protest. The king can be asked to commit suicide or to go on exile. What we know is that immediately you can't remove anyone, especially, that's why I don't like the military. The person becomes too powerful for you. You can't remove me. That's what he's saying. If we can say the military, if we can have a council that can remove the military, we say we can have them. The fact that they won't answer to anybody makes me feel like, no, do we want that kind of power to anybody? That is like absolute power. And absolute power, people will use it anyhow. That's why we can determine the type of democracy or leader system we want to run. What I know, either we call it democracy, anything we call it, it should be accountable. We should be able to protest, to say, whenever you've done wrong, we don't want you. I am one of those people that believe that the American style of democracy can never work in Africa. Never, never. I've always campaigned for either. It can never work. American democracy was designed by Americans. African democracy must be designed by Africans so that they can infuse their own system. And then the third one, if I remember again,
African Union.
What do you say?
The African Union.
The African Union, they are just a gang of old boys who do not serve the interests of Africans. Those guys, they are not just there. I don't regard them. I mean, when you see most of them, okay, let's look at it. Macky Sall will be part of those people that will condemn. Macky Sall, or maybe Museveni. Who are they? They are the same. That's why I know most of the system we have, they are as worse as we know. I just don't want us to look at how worse our system is to run to the next guy. As we are looking at our worst system, we are designing a better system. We are not just running around. We are angry with the existing system. The existing system is bad, very bad. African Union, ECOWAS, some of this system. ECOWAS is condemning Niger Coup, yet it's not looking at the guys that are changing the constitution. It's not condemning them because they are part of it, they are friends. That's bad system. But we can't run away from those things and run to another guy who might be worse than that. That's why we have to look for the mid ground so that we can look for the system that is supposed to work for everybody.
Thank you very much, Ahmed. Benga, I do see your hands raised up. Just real quick before you speak, Eugene Gao, I know you're on the call. You're very big part of this conversation. Please, if you can just go ahead and introduce yourself, and then definitely love to have your comment from you. And Jean-Claude, I also see you. Just hold on for Eugene real quick.
Good afternoon, family of my people from Africa. First thing I want to tell you guys is I love all of you guys. 1884, they had a meeting in Europe. Bismarck decided to divide Africa. I have family in Nigeria. I have family in Gabon. I have family in Niger. All those countries, basically, I feel like I am home. So thank you for having me in this panel. I am the chair of ADDI. Houston, for those who know what the ADDI is the African Diaspora Development Institute. And I'm extremely excited about the assignment that I have through ADDI to encourage the diaspora to be very involved in the affairs of Africa, because I truly believe that the diaspora can make a major, major difference in the affairs of Africa. For somebody who grew up in France, I was very fortunate in college to hear my professor in college say that all the luxury and the comfort that the young Frenchmen enjoy, it is at the expense of someone. And he paused and he asked the audience, do you guys know who is that someone? Nobody could answer the question. They did not know because they are trained to believe that France is a great country who create a lot of good technology. Most of us have flown in an Airbus. They do. They have subways. They have a lot of great manufacturing in France. But so they assume that their wealth and comfort stems from all those creations that France is able to put together. But none of them knew that their wealth is really tied to the looting of our resources in Africa. So the same professor had to answer that question by saying, we live well at the expense of Africans. I was very fortunate to experience that moment. I was also very fortunate to let go of the inferiority complex in front of a white man, because unless you live with them and unless they praise you and told you that you are so different, you have everything that any human being can dream of. So they look up to us so much, but if you don't have those experiences, you will never know that. I believe the diaspora can play a great role in Africa in teaching paradigm shift, teaching people not to feel inferior in front of white folks, because that's how they took advantage of our parents for the past 200 years, 300 years, 400 years, whatever the time may be. We've lost a lot simply because of the inferiority complex. So it is our responsibility to go back home to tell people, you have to be very, very careful when you deal with Europeans, because we don't want to commit the same mistake that our parents have committed. Now we have to undo a lot of things, especially the pact of continuation of colonialism. We need to undo all those pacts. It may not be easy, but it's not impossible. I truly believe that we can do that. And I'm glad that I'm seeing Niger, Gabon. Well, we're not sure about Gabon, but at least Niger. They want to turn the page on basically 70 years of being taken advantage of by France. They are the one funding a lot of the retirement in France is funded by all the wealth that they generate out of Niger and all the countries in Africa. When you lose your job, you get all kinds of social benefit in France. Well, us Africans, at least our family living down in Africa, they're the one financing unemployment in France. They are financing all kinds of healthcare, health benefits. Growing up in France, I remember healthcare was pretty much free, but it is free to them, but is us Africans are the one paying for it. So there's a lot of things that we need to undo to regain dignity, because the dignity of Africa has been completely slaughtered. So I was listening with a lot of interest to my brother Jean-Claude earlier when he reminded us that the Second World War, when France and all the countries in Europe were getting their butt kicked, well, the United States and the tirailleurs Senegalais came to basically bail them out. That's great. That is a great thing that happened. Now today, France is somewhat free, but the 14 nations in Africa who are still under bondage, who are we going to call on to bail us out? I understand that Wagner has a great interest in helping us out, but it's not for free. I look up to Nigeria and South Africa, the most powerful nations in Africa. We really need to appeal to them to get involved. By this time, South Africa and Nigeria should have an atomic bomb, because atomic bombs are a way to deter other nations to bully us. And we need to really fight at the Security Council, at the UN, to make sure that we have access to those kind of mechanism of defense. I really appeal to my Nigerian people. I'm so glad that more of them are getting involved. They got really upset at the current president when he thought he almost obeyed the order of Macron to go attack Niger. And many of them say, are you kidding me? We have a lot of family members in Niger. We're not going to participate in that mess. So I really call on Nigeria and South Africa to really get involved. I'm so glad that Mr. Julius Malema, he literally circled the French embassy, I believe last week, demanding that they depart from Africa. This is a great thing. We're supposed to have a rally in Washington, D.C. toward the end of the month to do the same thing. I really encourage my brothers and sisters from all over Africa to demand the depart of France, because France is one of the leech that is causing a lot of economic bleeding in Africa. And when that bleeding starts stopping, all of us, we are going to stand up as one man, and the economy is going to be a lot better. Our kids are not going to cross the desert anymore to go to Europe. In fact, they need to be reversed. Europeans going to start begging for visas to go to Africa. I'm a strong believer in Africa. We need to promote the motherland, because it, to me, is heaven on earth. It's just that somebody stole our identity, and somebody is using our credit cards, all our resources to live large. But I'm so glad that, sorry?
I want you to wrap up so I can also have others also contribute.
Yes. So that was my contribution today. Thanks a lot for having me, and let's continue the fight.
Thank you so much, Eugene. Thanks for your contribution. Very, very insightful. I mean, a lot of gems you drop in there. I want to call real quick on Benga, who is currently on the call. I would please, if you're able to, show yourself on videos, please do that. It also helps with the engagement, right? So people also know who they're talking to. So I want to call on Benga real quick to just share his comments, and then I would from there would talk about the current situation in Gabon and Niger. I would love to hear some thoughts around that, and then from the current situation, we'll then be touching on some of the social economic impacts, which I will be calling on Angelo earlier. So Benga, over to you real quick. If you can have your video on, please do that. We'd love to see you also. Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm gonna show my face and go off video. As you can see, I'm on that YouTube right now. So now I'm gonna go off video. Yeah. So everyone, thank you, TAN TV team, for the opportunity to contribute. My name is Benga from the Nigerian Center in Washington, D.C. My question to comment is very brief. I recall that the former UN ambassador to the United States, the woman, did several town halls and campaigns talking about the atrocities of France in Africa. I was wondering if we diaspora, it's often said crisis is a terrible thing to raise. How can we diaspora kind of elevate this opportunity to kind of have the US make a more drastic shift in policy position to Africa? Because oftentimes it's always been like reactionary when things happen on the continent, and then they are quick to declare as a result to what has happened. We saw what happened in Rwanda and many other countries. But when the ambassador to the African Union was going around talking about the imbalances in trade, the post-colonialism happening on the continent, we didn't see any position from the United States or the European Union or international organizations to Africa. But now we have this military come into power. So my question is like, what other strategies can we employ to get the United States have a more proactive posture to occurrences in the African continent, not just a reaction to when there's a crisis on the planet? Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Benga, for your question. I want to lump that question together with Jean-Claude. I know you're still on the call. I want you to kind of talk about answer some of Benga's questions, and then also talk about the current situation both in Niger and in Gabon. I know you have folks and you're actively you're very active in the continent, starting in Gabon. Jean-Claude, if you can just help us share some of your thoughts, respond to Benga's question, obviously, or share some ideas. Please go ahead and do that.
Thank you very much. And this is a great question, Benga. So to discuss, to start with Benga, Ambassador Arikana, who is actually at the core of the African Diaspora Development Initiatives, was part of the African Union. And she realized that being from East Africa and seeing how the Anglophone areas of Africa were developing very well, she kind of realized, through her tenure, there was something wrong in Francophone Africa. And for that instance, he's starting to have debate and go and have some town hall meeting, discuss about how can we liberate, Africa, since we're talking about the African Union, right? So again, going back to the vision of people like Julius Nyerere, Kenneth Kaunda, Kwame Nkrumah, and then one thing to understand is Ambassador Arikana, when she was doing this, she was becoming a threat. And what happened is, French gave a call to the former president of Chad and say, hey, the president of the African Commission is your former prime minister, Mr. And then Musa, can you tell Musa to remove this lady as an ambassador? I mean, yes, African Union came back and say, oh no, her tenure was over, but she was starting to threaten the interest of France in Africa, right? So understanding that, it already tells you that through awareness, through speaking, through teaching people what's really happening, change can happen. But what they didn't know is by pushing her out, they were actually creating one of the biggest enemy. Now, here we are in the US, there's constitutional, channels that we can use. You call your elected officials. You say, okay, well, I'm in this particular state, in this state here, who is in the Foreign Affairs Committee in my state at the federal level? Again, right? So if you go and try to talk to your elected official who is in charge of transportation, you're not going to achieve much. You say, the Senate is in charge of choosing the ambassador and so on and so forth. I mean, go through the vetting process. The Senate will speak to the president of the United States and say, hey, this thing that's going on in this country, I have people in my constituency calling me and they are from there, they have family there, and they say, this is the way we should handle it. Because I want to be reelected, I actually realize there's 1,000 of them here. And they say they're going to go and speak out against me that I am not doing what is good for their community, right? So you have channels that you can use in our system to really, really go after and look. Now, coming to democracy, there was a question that I think had on democracy. I think for me is really great. And I may kind of elaborate in it. One thing is the type of democracy that we need to build in Africa has to be a democracy built on dignity, because our people deserve their dignity. They deserve everything that God has given to that particular land. And what did some of those particular colonial masters did when they came in? They realized how organized the African society were. The traditional system, the chiefry system. Examples like that are in places like Botswana, where they have a traditional system that they call the cutlers. So even the president of the country will go and sit down on the bench with those chiefs and say, well, we need to take some decisions for the country. How can we all together make this happen? So we don't have to go and look at how these other ones are doing. No, we have it in our system. I mean, when I look at how the Fulani people before independence were able to push away the British Army. I mean, they were able to line up 40,000 men, warriors. I mean, you have to feed them. You have to make sure that you get messages to them. They were organized. Why don't we do like China? Go back into yourself and realize your strength, who you are, and then that's what's going to help you really become a better person. Now, coming into, I mean, there was a nice piece also by the New York Times back in the 2020 regarding, those that actually liberated Europe. Okay, I think again, some of these people from the from the colonies, from India, from Africa. I mean, it's important that we give recognition to those to whom recognition is due. Regarding the coup, well, the Chad had a coup, and the African Union did not condemn it, right? So African Union is definitely should not be the leverage to decide, right? Now, coming to Gabon, I believe that Gabon is an interesting case. It's a little bit different from the other areas. We had a family that was in power for 56 years. There was going to be a situation where very clearly the person that was announced as a winner was not the one that won, right? And they gave that particular person 64%. What was going to happen and what everybody knew was going to happen was that if Mr. Ali Bongo was declared the winner, the population would have been on the street and the population would have been slaughtered and people would have not backed down. So for us, the situation that we have, having the army taking over, actually is a salvage situation, which is better than having an innocent blood on the ground. Now, the army that's there, yes, it was actually the Republican Guard chief, but again, he had talked with some of his other colleagues, and he said the situation is going to go so bad because what had happened in 2016, where Ali Bongo had actually attacked the headquarters of the other opposition leader. I mean, it was a massacre, but what was going to happen was going to be worse. So Mr. Oligingema pretty much went to his peers and they say, we need to stop this. We cannot allow this to happen a second time. Who wants to be the one heading this? And I will support you. The other ones say, no, not for me, not for me, not for me. Everybody pretty much kind of told, you should be the one leading. So it is not like what you see a little bit in Niger, where General Chami, who is a chief of the guards, right, pretty much say, I am taking over. Mr. Ngema pretty much went to his peers and say, the situation is so bad. And the way some of these governments do is they only gonna give the real weapons to the people, the special army who is guarding the president. So the other military forces might have a weapon, but there's no bullet. Might have a tank, but there's no ammunition, so that they cannot take over, right? So Mr. Ngema actually took upon himself to go over to the other ones and say, we need to come united to stop what's happening in the country. Now, it's still in a few days of what has happened. Most of the population basically are very happy. Of course, we had to be very careful. We had to make sure that the rule of laws, human rights, and everything that actually build a society, because what we need today is to build our society, our countries, right? Sanctions is not the right way to handle with this type of situation, because when you hear that a family has been in power for 56 years, when you hear that an incumbent president, a sitting president, is changing the term of the constitutions, why is it that the African Union, the European Union, the United Nations are not saying anything? Because those coups don't just happen in a vacuum. The things happening. We see what's happening where we have youth and people crossing the Mediterranean. Well, it seems like, oh, it's a problem of Africa. But what's the reason? What's the root reason? If there's no opportunity, there's no hope. And through social media, some of that youth see that it seems like some of the folks, some of the peers who are in Europe are doing well and they come on vacation. They feel like the money, the resources is there. But those resources, as Mr. Eugene says, actually come from Africa. Where is the corporate social responsibility that those companies have in developing the areas where they're actually getting those resources? What about adding transformation? What about a transfer of technology, of knowledge? To me, when those things are not done, these are the real coup that should be condemned. And I'm probably going to stop here and probably give somebody else also opportunity to speak.
Yes. Thank you so much, Jean-Claude. And Danielle, please, real quick, react your thoughts, opinions. And
Okay,
then
so
go ahead.
I'll be a few minutes. One, Ambassador Americana, ironically, that's how I found out about what was happening in Africa, because when she was fired, it actually triggered media attention from my Caucasian friends. And when they started looking at her videos, and they were basically like, wow, they put it bluntly, they were like, France is raping Africa. That's how the reaction was to it. And they're like, why are you guys letting them rape you? Like, they couldn't understand how these countries were letting France get away with it. They said it's like highway robbery. Second thing is getting involved. I know with Sierra Leone, when they partner with African ancestry, they're using their test before, but by granting citizenship to those in the diaspora who had connections, like I'm Mende Temni on my mother's side, it created constituents in the United States. And so when something happens, we can call our congressman, doesn't matter what area they're in, and they can get involved. Like, for instance, I'm not sure how true this is, but there was rumored a coup attempt in Sierra Leone that got thwarted. I think US intelligence got involved and helped alert the Sierra Leone government. And so that was kind of quietly put down. But it's like little stuff like that. And the US government now seems more involved in Sierra Leone, like more than usual. And they're trying to keep the country from going the way of being the Francophone countries. And so that's, I think, because a lot of constituents. And so the US is like trying to help them out, but not as public as other places, but there's more pressure because of us in the United States. So that's all I got to say.
Thank you so much. I want to shift. I know we have a few minutes left. Ideally, this conversation should end by 7:30 Eastern time. But if you could just permit me 15 minutes in addition to 7:30, so that's 7:45. I definitely want to touch on the socio-economic impact of this conversation. And Angelo, I think you're right on point. I would like to get your thoughts, Angelo, on what some of the social impact are as regards what is currently happening on the continent. Angelo Shetty, please go ahead and mute yourself. Angela, are you there? Looks like we can't hear you anymore, Angelo. Okay, let's go ahead and call on. I see an iPhone guest. There are several iPhone guests, so it's so hard to recognize who it is. But I'm guessing it's Morgan Lawrence Freeman. Is that you on the iPhone? Please kindly unmute yourself and then go ahead and speak.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Lawrence, can hear you. Go ahead, please go ahead.
Hi, thank you. I've been involved in Africa for over 30 years, West Africa, East Africa. And I would just like to put my perspective, which I think is a valid one, which is the world right now has changed. The BRICS meeting, which brought on 6 new nations, 2 of them African, is a sign that the rules-based order is not in control of everything at this point. The coup in Niger is another telling sign that the Western policy has failed. Niger was supposed to be the hub against fighting violent extremism, and it failed. After $500 million was put into the military, 6 different bases were built. So the West right now is losing its control. Globally, the world has changed. In Africa, it's changing. And I see various signs of various parts of Africa, various countries, taking responsibility and leading forward in development. But as the previous speaker said, if you don't have development, you're not going to have a country. Poor people are always going to be manipulated and desperate. And the coups are a result of the failed policy. And the French Afrique is over. And the United States should distance itself immediately from the French, which it has not. And I don't know what plans the French have for dealing with Niger. And I don't know what the U.S. State Department has, except I'm very concerned they're supporting Tinubu's claim or activation of an invasion. But my essential view is we've changed, the world has changed, and now we can move in building a better set of relationships for economic and development throughout the world. We now have an alternative to the IMF and World Bank and the rules-based order. And I think this is a good opportunity for us.
Thank you so much, Mr. Lawrence. So nice to hear from you. I want to call Dr. Oluremi Lukweju to be a part of this conversation. Please kindly unmute yourself and speak, Dr. Lukweju. I think you're muted.
Am I okay now?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, good evening. I'm glad to join this conversation. And I'll be remiss if I don't say a word. Okay, I only talk in medical terms, being a medical doctor. But I've been listening to the talkers, who seem to know so much about this topic at hand. So what I'm trying to say, basically, just to throw another angle into the whole equation here, that should we participate in changing Africa from afar? Because that's where we are. We're talking from abroad, from the US, from Europe, in changing Africa the way it is, this so-called new colonialism that is taking place, should we basically mobilize to join the fight? The people in Africa will be looking at us and making snide remarks that it's easy for us to talk because talk is cheap. We're talking from our comfort zone, where we are in the countries of the so-called colonizers, living in comfort, but not joining, putting boots on the ground, to join the fight. So my question or my comment to, the erudite speakers is that what should we do as a group? Look at how many Africans are abroad, all over Europe, all over, America. People will say, if you go to any part of this world and you don't see a Nigerian there, then you need to run away from there. Because that's how we all scattered out there. We come in here, get our education, I've been here forever, but we're scared to go home. Well, we can talk, this way, but we're not joining the fight. We have to find a way, and I want to know what are the talkers, what is it there that you guys have for us to mobilize so that we can go back home. Look at what happened in Israel. In those days, whether it's by design or by force, the Jews went back to Israel and they were able to build up Israel the way it is today. We are here rotting away, giving our expertise to these colonizers, and then looking afar and talking about how bad our countries are. So we don't actually mobilize to go back home. Like people are doing in Ghana. The Americans are going to Ghana, the Ghanaians are going back to join the fight. Then we can continue to talk forever. So I just want to hear any comments on that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ilukweju. It's always just to see the diversity of folk on the call. To your question, I also want to call on Angelo, right? Angelo Shetty. I know you definitely want to talk on the social economic impact, and then if you can also touch on the question Dr. Ilukweju is asking on how you think the diaspora can actively participate and not just talk as he mentioned. Angelo, are you able to unmute now?
Start my video.
Okay.
Starting my video now.
Okay, just go ahead and speak. Go ahead.
How are you doing today?
Very good. Please go ahead.
Yeah, so I just wanted to mention a few things here. I heard my brother Jean-Claude talking about how we can get involved in everything that is taking place on the other side in the continent. I think when it comes to the continent, we really need to come together in a few groups of different groups, depending on the area of expertise, and to be able to put together a very active strategy when it comes to the military, to the politics, the economy, the social, cultural, especially the education piece, because what kills us is really the education. We have tendency to mix a lot of things. And those mix of things makes it really hard for us to be able to work with our brothers and sisters on the ground in Africa, because there's a lot of things that they don't have the right information, a lack of education and information that causes a big problem. So there's a break or a disruption between them on the ground and us being on the outside. Even here within us here in the diaspora, some people who are not really involved, getting only the information from the continent. It's a mix of two information. You have to have the information from the ground and see the information that you get here from the Western world, of those if I can call them, for lack of words, the oppressors who are really doing us wrong for the past few centuries here. So what I would like to say here that is really very important, that we get to see every aspect of the issue, but the core of it is really the education. We need to educate ourselves in current situations and see how we can tackle those situations, especially economically, because today is the economy. We have a big issue with our economy. We are not controlling ourselves economically, even in the Western countries. Just to give you a quick example here, the Chinese have been able to become powerful because they leverage with America. Okay, so for the past 50 years, China came up with a strategy where they made America to depend on them. So today we have to start thinking about how to make all those Western, and it's not only limited to Western. We too much focus on just Western. We don't think about India. We don't talk about Asia, China. So we need to kind of start thinking about every aspect of it. We have tendency to only jump into, we are not proactive. We're not being preventive of things. So right now it's just because France is up to playing this game with Africa, then we stand, and then but we don't see the rest of the other fronts that we have.
Okay.
So
that's about it. Thank you so much, Angelo. So I know again, we're running very short on time. So I'm gonna call everybody on folks that have their hands raised up right now. I see an iPhone guest hand raised. I don't know who the person is. I'm just gonna give you please 2 minutes so we can start bringing the conversation to a close. 2 minutes. So the iPhone guests, please kindly unmute yourself. I don't know who the person is. Otherwise, I am going to be calling on Ahmed. Ahmed, please kindly unmute yourself and then speak. Ahmed Tijani.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. I mean, this is a very enlightening session. I just want to say, I'm thinking about two things that we might start with. I know our problem is so much, but even the steps of a thousand steps starts with one, right? So I'm thinking of two things. The first one I'm thinking of is, first, we need to look at developing economically, and that might mean some productions. We from the diaspora need to help Africa to begin to get its hand to produce some basic things and stop importing everything, which is causing a lot of capital flight. The second one I'm looking is from the political angle, which is there are some very faulty rules or laws and acts that are embedded in many African countries that is causing it to get weakened. I'll give you an example of the country I come from, Nigeria. I don't know why the president of the country must be the one that will appoint the chairman of the INEC. Many people are still fighting on who won, we do not. I've told people, do it 100 times. You can't have a clear winner like you want. The person participating in the election is nominating the umpire. When he nominates the umpire will knowingly or unknowingly be biased. So you need a bigger gang up to take out any ruling party in Africa. The president nominates whoever is going to be whistling between him and whoever is contesting. So he can do whatever he likes. The guy listens to him. He will do it for his party or anything. I think those faulty foundation, we need to take it away from the president and make it stand alone so that when people vote, it is their votes that count. Many people in Nigeria, for example, will tell you the 2015 election was free and fair. I told them that was never true. The ruling party only lost because there was a big gang up against the president. It was not because it was free and fair. There was a very big gang up. If there had been a division, they would have won as well. So unless we begin to have those kind of structural issues, nothing can, I mean, we need to start from here and look at it. There is this particular law in this country. Can we start fighting it from here, mobilizing those at home, talking about it in every avenue, using the media and everything here to influence and ensure that is taken away one at a time. As we do it, we begin to weaken those structures that are faulty and begin to hand it over to something that can work. Those are my thoughts.
Thank you so much. I want to call Adedaya just before you chime in. I want to recognize Donley Howard. I know Donley has had his hands raised up for a minute. Donley, please go ahead and speak.
Yes, I'm just sort of reacting to a lot of the comments that I'm hearing, and not sure where to start, but someone described earlier the current coups as something comparable to the Arab Spring. And I'm not sure I see that, because the Arab Spring, to me, had more the look of a popular uprising, whereas this looks more like the generals taking over, as the generals occasionally do it seems like every 10 or 15 years they decided to do that. I'd be interested in seeing more evidence of the people actually rising up, and haven't really seen that yet. You know, you see them cheering after the coup, but it's hard to say what's really driving that, unless you're really on the ground and know what's happening. As far as on the social and economic front, I do think, and I kind of agree with a couple of the comments that describe the military as not being really the answer in terms of an alternative government. Yes, I understand you're mad at France and you want to get France out of there. I think as someone that's in finance, I understand, the problems with the CFA and so forth. But that doesn't necessarily mean the military is the way to do it. Also, on the economic front, I'm very much concerned with what attracts investment to a country, what attracts capital, what attracts people, what attracts resources, not just from the West or from anywhere else, but even from within Africa, from one African country to another. The point is, what makes a place an attractive place to start an enterprise, to run an enterprise. And when a place is unstable in the way that military takeovers tend to indicate, that does not make a place attractive. So that's something that we might want to keep in mind as we start thinking about what to do. Oh no, the other thing I was going to say is, when we start thinking about what kind of system is better, we need to think about think about accountability, and we need to think about creating a situation where you can oppose the government, without fear of arrest or something worse. We need a situation where we can disseminate information, where there's media that can provide information to people that's credible.
Okay. Thank you so much,
I'll leave
Dolly.
it there.
Appreciate the contribution. Lastly, I want to call on Benga. Benga, I know you have your hands raised, so please kindly unmute and go ahead and speak.
Thank you very much for the second opportunity. I just want to quickly respond to Dr. Reni's point about what the diaspora can do and potentially considering going back to be a part of the building process. Well, I would say that when we look at the Jewish Israel model that you referred to, how the Jewish were able to go back and rebuild Israel, I just want us to consider that the American-Israeli alliance that we celebrate today hasn't always been so. It took the diaspora, the Jewish diaspora here in America, to elevate that alliance as foreign priority issue for the US government. There are several diaspora groups now. So right now there is IPAC with the Jewish that really gives US what are the interests of Israel when formulating foreign policy. I think one way we can start with immediately here with the African diaspora is to pretty much put our numbers to work. And somebody already spoke about that earlier. I'm not downplaying. It is inevitable that at some point we have to move back to the continent to be a part of the building process. But while we are here, that transition is not going to happen next week. It's going to happen over a protracted period of time. We have this political apathy. A lot of us came here for socioeconomic reasons, but we don't necessarily see the interplay of policy and foreign policy to that both our economic prosperity here as a diaspora and our countries back home in Africa. So I really want to highlight and elevate that we really have to be intentional as a group, as a community, using our voice on foreign policy issue. And that doesn't cost us anything. We are now American citizens. We have seen the other model, particularly Jewish, that a lot of people try to reference. It wasn't always been so. Some people made that happen. I just wanted to echo that. Thank you so much, Dario, for another opportunity.
Thank you so much, Benga. Adedayo, I know you have a point, right? And then after you, I'm going to call on Jean-Claude to help us just, bring it all back together as we, look to close out. Adedayo, please go ahead.
Okay, so I'm just going to say a couple of things in regards to, I think just buffering the point of Benga just now on diaspora impact or the role of diaspora. It's amazing, right, that somehow it seems like we're very, very isolated from each other. Like even within just think of the continent and how difficult it is to travel to each other's nations, to trade, to do things that normally should just be simple, right? It's like you need a visa. Imagine needing a visa to go to Texas from New York. That's really what it looks like on the continent, right? So that mentality of isolation, I feel like it's something we still battle with, like what's happening in Niger, Gabon, and every other place. You don't really find that mixture of ideas where you have, a South African coming to talk about this issue, or like unless it matters to your country where you have family ties, especially when you're part of the diaspora, you don't really care. And then even information within those on the continent, it's like everyone is battling for themselves. And to me, it's like until we really come together to understand our similarities and know that, listen, we're not that far apart. We're all the same, like in everything, like we're all struggling the same and we need to come up with solutions. That's one way we can move forward. And so I want to bring this back home a little bit to the vision of TAN TV and what we're trying to do here, right? The essence of this conversation, having a town hall like this. By the way, the town hall was really a brainchild of Bolaji, because he was like, we need to, like, watching TV is like, we need to bring this, we need to do something about this, right? But even in the bigger sense, what TanTV is really trying to accomplish is, can we bring different pockets of diaspora communities to the table under the American media ecosystem, right? There's nothing like this. There's no media entity that really caters to our voices. Yes, you have independent platforms that focus on their countries, right? Like you have the ones, the Ethiopians, they know what to watch, they know which channel to go to, but you don't really have a platform that brings together voices as powerful as what we've heard today. So, my request personally to you as, the CEO of TanTV is, if you are connected to any diaspora networks, organizations, that you can help us expand our reach, right? To be connected to these diaspora organizations so that we have diversity of voices at the table for forums like this, for articles that we publish, for stories that we aim to tell on TanTV. It would really make what we're doing make sense in its entirety. So I'm going to just make that plea and request to you. And then one other thing is, we aim for insightful conversation. So if you're able to like pen articles or opinion, or you have folks in your communities that can write and shed views, the platform is here for us to make use of. So
thank you.
I'll
Thank
stop
you,
there.
Ade. Thank you, Adedaya. I was going to cut you already because I know I'm really running off on time.
Sure.
Jean-Claude, please, again, you've heard all the perspectives, all the different opinions, right? All the insights from everybody on the call, right? I would love you to just help us, bring it back home, right? What is the way forward? What is it that we can do, right? What are the things that we should be thinking about? Right? How do we move the needle from this conversation, right? Again, if you can just help us do this, in as short time as possible, please, now, please go ahead.
Thank you so much. First, I would like to thank Adedayo and Abolaji for this opportunity that you're giving to us, Africans in the diaspora, to speak about issues that matters to us, issues that's important to the world, and issues that others have to understand that we're going to do everything to make sure that we bring solutions to those issues. One of the key things is we understand that if we have to kind of summarize what's being said here is we understand that we have to work together. We have to come together. I have an opportunity 2 days ago to speak with a lady from our community, and she was born in Gabon. She was raised in Gabon, and she did a DNA test. And what the DNA test revealed that she had some elements in a family from Senegal, from Nigeria, from other places. So one thing is, interestingly, people seem to just want to focus on areas where they're from. But when you start understanding that that particular place where maybe you were born was part of a migration, but also that you have family connected to East Africa, Southern Africa, Western Africa, the US, the Caribbean, then at that point, things that happen in Trinidad and Tobago will matter to you. Things that happen in Senegal will matter to you. What's going to really bring dignity to our people, whether in the diaspora, in the Caribbean, or in Africa, is economic empowerment. Through economic empowerment, then you could start also talking about transfer of technology, educating people. In DRC, there is a couple of projects to bring electricity. The Inga Dam is estimated at $80 billion. In America, we have 4.5 million, and that's just the numbers. I know it's more. 4.5 million immigrants from Africa. You take that 80 billion, you divide by 4.5, that gives you an estimate of about $18,000. So if each of those particular immigrants could contribute $18,000 over time, we finance the Inga-Gam. That Inga-Gam can give power to between 7 to 10 countries in Africa. The dividend of that will return into the hands of who? Of the Africans. Economic empowerment. But also as part of that, you develop corporate social responsibility, where you start educating people, providing roads, whatever goes with that. In America, I was very interested in 2011 to work with Congressman Bobby Rush and Miss Angèle Cuomo. They were working on putting together a fund, an African fund for Africa, because when you were trying to put a fund to send money to Africa, the limit was $99,000. Anything above that, you could not. How can we talk about development if we are not the one holding the money? The answer to the question of, well, we're here, what can we do? Because we have to go there. What our Africa need the most is technology or technical skills, but most importantly, money. A lot of people are selling our countries because some people are coming from outside and buying land and all of that. What about having the African diaspora doing that? We could do it. We have examples, for example, putting funds together. We have Mr. I believe Darnley Howard. I mean, he could probably work with us on that. We have examples of funds. One of the most aggressive fund that exists and is been in existence for over 20 years is a Norwegian wealth fund, right? I mean, we just have to find a way to make things work. Whether change comes from military coup or civil unrest, is still an opportunity. How can we take advantage of that opportunity to work together? And to finish, as Madame Adedayo says, we need a uniform platform to speak and exchange and put strategy together. We could do it. We have the power to do it. Let's get to work.
Thank you so much, Jean-Claude. And, it's been so powerful just listening to the voices that have been on this call, right? And, it's also a privilege to be able to, have this opportunity to also talk to be on this call, to be able to meet interesting and intelligent minds like yourself. I just want to take a quick comment. I see comments from DJ Johnson, who just talked about, have we thought about an economic boycott of France, right? As we as African Americans contribute billions of dollars to the US GDP, talks money, right? Adjoba, right? Who is from Canada, right? She's a dollar, right? And she's supporting 11 pregnant women on her own, and she's doing this also in Niger. And Daniel, talked about his DNA ancestry, and then he's also Yoruba, and is also from the Fulani tribe also. So again, I say all this because at the end of the day, we are all connected in one way or the other. Either you're an African immigrant or even descendants of slaves in the United States, we are all connected in one way or the other. And to kind of just wrap this up, again, we talked about the global conversations. Usually the global conversation about Africa often leans towards the perception of the continent needing help or external aid or intervention, right? The view of this look, often looks at Africa as being unable to, right, insufficient. A lot of Africa lacks self-sufficiency. That's always some of this. It's thought, right? The truth is, Africa has agency, where we have people that can influence decisions. We have people who are in position of power to be able to change how things really work on the continent, right? In terms of the recent surge in international attention to the continent, again, this is basically coming from the side of geopolitical competition, either from Russia, China, or the United States. But again, can Africa be viewed more as a partner than more of a project, right? Africa needs development. Yes, we understand that, but then we want to be seen as equal partners to the development of Africa and not just beneficiaries of aid, right? The future of the continent ultimately lies in the hands of us, Africans. Like we all mentioned today, the future of Africa lies in the hands of Africans themselves. Right. So at this point, I just want to say thank you all for the opportunity and for the privilege of your time. We will definitely be taking out some content or pieces from these conversations to developing more about the editorial that I'll be sharing with you, and also sending out to different agencies on some of your contributions and perspective. I encourage you all to please go on to 10tv.com, www.10tvstudios.com. Sign up to become a member, right? One of the ways you can support us, also following our social media, right? Go out there, leave a comment on our pages, tell somebody about 10TV. And lastly, I want to give a very big shout out to our partners, Jean-Claude, Africa Consult, right? Afritech Consult. I just want to say a big thank you to you. And I also want to say a very big thank you to African Ancestry for also giving us a shout out, on social media, on Instagram. Again, that kind of really amplified our work. So again, thank you very, very much to everybody. Definitely be looking forward to seeing you on our next call. Thank you all for the contribution again. You have a good one. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks.
Okay, good night.
Good night. Thank you. Thank you. Balaji, you're muted if you're still talking.
Oh, yes. Thank you, Dr. Johnson. We see you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Daniel, thank you so much. It's good to see you. You waited all the while to the end of the call. Dr. Johnson,
Yeah, I sent some links you guys might find helpful. Daba Finance basically helps people invest in African companies. I'm not talking about like 5, 10,000. I'm talking about like $500,000, $1 million and up. And so that would be a great resource for you guys. And then there's Prosper Africa, which it's a US based, but they basically give grants to US companies investing in Africa. So
thank you very much. Thank you for
Yeah,
sharing.
thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Johnson, DJ Johnson, sorry.
I think